Okay, hello everyone. So today, well, I suppose we're getting close to Christmas. Actually, not that I've given it a lot of thought this year. Unfortunately, it's just been a very busy time of year, as it is for many people, I guess. Thanks for those who are joining me, and I hope to get through some information for you today. Some very good information, and I'm giving it all away for free. Okay, so keep that in mind when you are listening to this. First off, I want to thank you all for. Hey, Jenny, thanks for joining me. First off, I just want to thank you all for joining me and supporting the channel throughout the year. It's been a very good year for many reasons, but I do appreciate it, really do. So today, I want to give you some information that will help you. Will definitely help you in so many different ways, more ways than you might expect, actually. So we're going to go through protocols for and timing for ice bath or cold therapy. It doesn't have to be an ice bath, and even just cold air can give you the same benefits to a lesser extent. Okay. And we're going to go through some breathwork protocols, and if you want, I'll even give you a couple of easy techniques. I am working on a very good combination right now for breathwork. One that I put on video anyway. One that I regularly use. A combination of Tumo and Nadi Shodhana breathing is very good for getting rid of colds and flus and building your immune system and so on, and many other benefits actually. But that video will be up soon, before New Year's anyway, next couple of days. And also for strength training. So I'll be going through some of the protocols and reasons why breath work will actually help you to develop strength, but also hypertrophy as well. I will also go through some training protocols as well that will help you, and timing for all of this to sort of work synergistically. So I thought maybe let's start with some ice bath therapy, okay? Well, a cold therapy anyway. First off, I'll just say hello to everyone. Thanks for the comment there, Jonathan and Terry Rised. Yeah, very good. Sorry, Abs won't be joining us, but that was just a trailer from an interview I did with him earlier this year. And Jeannie, always good to see you, mate. Hope you're well. Hope you have a good Christmas. So I hope everyone has a good season this year, and spend time with your family and friends, and anyway. So let's get into some of the. There's a lot of myths involved when it comes to cold therapy, and recently there are benefits to opposite as well. Like heat therapy is also very good. When it comes to heat, for example, like in Northern Europeans, they like to do a lot of sauna work. But whenever they do the sauna, they also do the cold therapy afterwards. They go sit outside in the snow, or they jump in the frozen lake, or they jump in an ice bath. Okay. There's a great reason for this contrast. With heat therapy, for example, it's great for things like because it makes you sweat. Okay, so you sweat out a lot of deuterium. Okay, so especially and toxins. It's a great way to bring toxins out of the body. All right. A good mate Jonathan said that while sitting in a sauna, his ketone levels actually rise as well. So that would be another great benefit. But there's a lot of other benefits, such as it also stimulates your lymph fluid and circulation and things like that as well. But sweating out the deuterium and getting out those toxins is a very, very big part, especially in today's society. I mean, we get toxins from many other from many sources. Our food, our water, especially if you live here in Australia, the water here is absolutely rancid. The plastics that are in everyday life sort of thing, PUFAs and everything else. But then there's the problem that you do have if you do too much of this without the contrast. Okay, especially, well, actually for men and women, is you lower your testosterone level. Okay, especially for men because the testicles are external and so on. But in both men and female, you will lower your testosterone levels, and that leads to problems like lowering your blood cell production, EPO production, and so on. So you need that contrast. If you're going to sit in the sauna, you need to do cold therapy afterwards. And so that's this is a cultural thing from Northern European. They just do this all the time anyway. So they've sort of grown up with that sort of thing going on. But the benefits of the cold. So there are a lot of people out there saying that cold therapy is bad for you for all these different reasons, and you don't want to lower inflammation after training and all this other stuff. All right, so we'll go through some of these things, some of these myths, and so on. The fact that they also say it's bad for the thyroid and function and so on and so on, but it's all just gym bro sort of myths, sort of BS. Problem is, a lot of people do these things at the wrong time, and they expect this silver bullet sort of one sort of ice bath a week sort of thing is going to make them superhuman and so on and so on. And it doesn't work that way. Nothing does. Nothing ever works that way. So the best time to do this, to do any kind of ice therapy, okay. Sandy, nice to see you, Sandy. Thanks for joining me. So timing wise, if you are, for example, a bodybuilder and you're going to the gym for hypertrophy reasons, the best time to do any kind of cold therapy is first thing in the morning, because you want to lower inflammation before the gym. Okay, you want to. There's another great benefit is that you are cooling yourself, cooling your body before you train. And when you are in a cooler state, your muscles are nice and cool. Your body's, still obviously you want to get heat into your joints so you avoid injuries and so on. You don't want to be frozen, sort of thing. But the cooler your body is running when you train, the harder you can push yourself. Okay, the more effort you can put into it. That's just the way it is. So it's always best to do cold therapy before you go to the gym. Now, other benefits, like health benefits, we're talking about cold therapy. That's good. Yeah. Now, some of the other benefits of cold therapy is the fact that you stimulate lipid production. Okay, you stimulate brown adipose tissue, and brown adipose tissue actually is where mitochondria is produced as well. So you're actually producing more mitochondria. Okay, you also now this is a good conversation that Sarah Pugh did recently with Dr. Thomas Seeger. In the mitochondria and so on, we actually produce our own light as well, which photon light, when the brown adipose tissue is stimulated and so on. So we actually will also produce more D3. Well, D3 is actually not. D3 actually uses blood as more of a transport to get into the fat cells. Okay, because we actually store it in fat cells, so it really doesn't this whole like supplement industry and like low D3 sort of thing, a lot of it is just complete nonsense, right? This is why there was never any kind of deficiency in like Northern Europeans beforehand. Like cold has always worked very well for D3 production, and D3 is also like a pre-hormone for testosterone. So when all this happens, okay, we also produce more testosterone, and testosterone will stimulate your kidneys to produce more EPO, erythropoietin hormone, which will stimulate your bone marrow to produce more blood cells. So this all works, okay, to strengthen your immune system. Okay, so a cold will actually, a lot of people think using cold therapy will make you sick, but actually it's going to do the opposite. It's going to stop you from getting sick. It's going to stop you from getting colds and flus and things like that. And it'll certainly help you treat the colds and flus as well. So, you sort of starve a fever, get yourself into the cold. And, again, it doesn't have to be like a, 0 degree sort of ice bath. It's really what you can tolerate. So I'll get into that in just a sec. Now, with brown adipose tissue as well, brown adipose tissue is stimulated by cold, and it also takes up blood glucose levels faster than any other cell. It actually competes if you have cancer, for example, like I do, especially if you have tumors and so on. Brown adipose tissue can take up blood glucose levels faster than tumor cells can. And this has actually been shown in rat studies and also human studies where people were in cool rooms. Some were in a 14-degree room for 24 hours. Some were in a room at just 21 degrees Celsius for 7 days. Okay. So even 21 degrees is not that cold. You don't have to be late. So this is cold air therapy, and it does have similar benefits to being in an ice bath. Now, when it comes to ice bathing and I think protocols for frequency, you are far better off to do it, for even 5 to 10 minutes each morning, rather than doing one a week for like an hour. Okay, it's all about consistency. It's not about just every now and then. Okay, it's the same with everything. You need to be consistent with this. So you get far more benefit from doing, even if you did like 5 minutes in the morning, every morning, rather than half an hour to an hour once a week. Okay, that's just not going to do much for you once a week, sort of thing. So then again, now when we're talking about moving brown adipose tissue as well, this will also it also browns white adipose tissue. So things like, it will help move things like belly fat and chest fat and all that sort of stuff. So now it's not really a weight loss sort of thing. Like it does help you to lose weight. Okay, but it's not going to give you a six-pack just by doing an ice bath or like cold therapy and so on. Having said that, though, the benefits of just stimulating the brown adipose tissue and tanning, what they call tanning the white adipose tissue, and then you get what's called beige fat, okay, or beige adipose tissue. All right, so you get reduced HbA1c, so it's great for diabetics. You get because of reduced blood glucose levels. Obviously, also in some countries, actually, it's standard of care for cancer treatments. Now, I never knew that. When I was going through chemotherapy, cold therapy was never ever mentioned at all, not once. For me, I actually did do a lot of cold showers, but that was simply because when I was going through the chemotherapy, I had a lot of neutropenic fevers. I had a lot of heat coming out of my body that from the radiation of the chemotherapy going through my blood and coming out the pores of my skin. I was hot all the time, so I would stand in a cold shower for as long as I could just to keep my temperature down. So not knowing that at the time, but it was actually really helping me to get through the treatments. So it's something I think that it should be. I mean, in Australia, for some reason, it's not standard of care. In other parts of Europe, it is. Okay, it's not in America either. And when talking about chemotherapy, like there's a 2004 study done. I can actually leave a link in the description maybe later. The efficacy of chemotherapy in Australia was 2.1%. Yeah, just 2.1%. Like any other drug that had such a low efficacy would be withdrawn from the market, wouldn't you think? And in America was, I think the highest point was, I think it was like 2.4%. So, over a very large population. So, cold therapy, I recommend for anyone and everyone, actually, but especially if you have any kind of medical condition such as diabetes, cancer, or anything else. There are so many great benefits to it. There really are. Yeah, it's pretty bad, actually, Jeannie, the heat that comes out. Hey, Josephine, good to see you. Thank you, Sandy. Happy to be here. That's good. Great shirt. Yeah, thank you. That's mine, actually. It's my design. That's radioactive wear. Yeah. So, yeah, actually, we can talk about this with the breath work as well. So there are a lot of great benefits to ice bathing and cold therapy in general. Even cold air, if you have the air conditioning going and sort of in your room, this is going to have great benefits as well. And I recently just came back from Japan, where I stayed 3 weeks with a Japanese family, like a sort of homestay sort of thing. Yeah, like literally, like the house was colder inside than it was outside. It was. I mean, it did snow on one of the days I was there as well. It's winter in Japan, summer here in Australia, but they're not really big on heating the whole place. Like they heat one room, the living room, where they sit and watch TV, sort of thing. But the rest of the house, they don't bother heating. And I think that has a lot of great benefits as well. That's something they're used to, and they've lived there for like 40 plus years. But it was actually my in-laws. My father-in-law is 73 years old, and like every day he goes for a 2-hour walk and does exercise. It doesn't matter what the weather is like, except for heavy rain. And I think this is one of the reasons why he's very fit, very healthy in his age as well. He's just used to that cold. It's a standard thing for him. It's a normalized thing, and that's the thing. Like I think comfort kills us. We spend our whole lives trying to comfort ourselves and get into that nice warm blanket and so on. But if if you tell these days though, if you tell your doctor that your testosterone, or you get your testosterone measured, if above certain levels, they think you're either on TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, or they think you're taking steroids and so on. Like it's a bad thing. Low testosterone is the worst thing. It's like cholesterol. You should have a high cholesterol. You should have high testosterone as well. And that's not just for men. It's women too. Okay, because these same processes happen in the female body. You still need testosterone to stimulate your kidneys to produce the EPO and then your blood cells and so on. Okay, so, and of course you also need to stimulate your brown adipose tissue, your mitochondria. Okay, this is how you grow mitochondria in the brown adipose tissue as well. And you create light in mitochondria. You actually create light. Okay, so this is where we get to keep our D3 levels and and so on and so on. So there are so many benefits to the cold that it's undeniable that we need it. All right. But let's have a look at training principles or training protocols for ice or cold therapy, right? Now, when you start using cold therapy, it doesn't mean that you just get the coldest tub you can get and chuck in a heap of ice and just jump in and scream like a little girl for 30 seconds. All right. It's like going to the gym. You always start with light weights, okay, and then the weights eventually increase in weight. Okay, so you eventually use heavier and heavier and heavier weights. Okay, and it's the same with cold therapy. Start with a moderate temperature. Just something just to make you go, "Oof, that's cool," sort of thing. You don't even have to shiver. Right? It doesn't have to be cold enough that you shiver or that your testicles sort of crawl up into your throat to stay warm. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so it's a tolerance thing that you build up. Okay, so at the moment, like I love a 0 degrees bath, all right, tub, but that doesn't mean that I started that way. Like I started at I think I started at like 16 degrees, and then I sort of worked my way down. Right, as the same with even just a cold shower. A cold shower, just you can have it lukewarm. So mix the hot and cold and just make it lukewarm, and then just and then build that tolerance to get down to just straight cold water. Just that's all you need to do. It's really not that bad. Hey Jonathan, good to see you, mate. Actually, in just a minute I'll put the link. Actually, if you guys want to join, you're most welcome to as well. And we'll say the happy Christmas and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be an extreme cold. Like it doesn't have to be chronic cold, all right? And the time doesn't have to be chronic either. Anything under 10 minutes is enough. Okay, like 5-10 minutes is enough each day. Though you're far better off doing it consistently every day rather than doing it once a week for a longer period of time. Now, another great benefit of doing it first thing in the morning is that you get a small cortisol spike as well. Now, if you can do it outside, that's even better. Now, cortisol spike in the morning, that's our wake up hormone. And we're supposed to get that cortisol spike in the morning so that we get that sort of a bit of a wake up rush. And I mean, it's going to be much better than drinking coffee. All right. And then throughout the day, as we go, the cortisol levels go down and we start producing melatonin and so on and so on. Then so it's going to wake you up. It's going to start all those processes. As it also is going to help you get into that was it it's also going to help you start your hormone production early, and everything's going to it's going to keep you in tune with the circadian biology as well. Okay, So that's another great benefit. But you're also training your autonomic nervous system. This is a hormetic stressor. Okay, so you are also building up a tolerance, okay, for your autonomic nervous system, because when you train your autonomic nervous system to deal with, okay, this is a stressor, but it's a positive thing. Okay, you are training your autonomic nervous system to deal with stresses, other stresses throughout the day, throughout your life. Okay, so you get to handle or you get to tolerate more stresses without getting those big cortisol spikes later on through the day. Okay, which means that you won't get so like if something stresses you out a little bit later through the day, the cortisol spike won't be so bad, and your hormone production will stay fairly level. So in that respect, it also helps with moving fat and so on, and stop producing fat tissue and so on. Now, like I mentioned just before, when it comes to training, if you are a bodybuilder, for example, and you're looking to train for hypertrophy, you want the bigger muscles, that means that you want to do the ice bath before training, because you want to lower the inflammation of the joints, for one, and you are also cooler when you go to the gym. So you can train harder, you can push yourself a little bit harder, or you'll have less pain, okay, because the inflammation is already lowered before you train. So that means that any joint pain and anything else like that is going to be a lot less. You don't want to do, if you're looking for hypertrophy, you don't want to do this after training, after the gym, because that inflammation you get from training is actually part of the recovery and growth of muscle tissue, okay, and so on. Now, there's a difference when you are training for hypertrophy, because you can do, say, hours afterwards, say 4 to 6 hours after training. You can then like have a cold shower before you sleep. This will help with joint pain, inflammation, and other things, of course, testosterone levels and so on, but not immediately after. Where you would train, like as a strength coach, when I was training basketballers, for example, during competition, if you have if they have a strong training session, and then they might have a game the next day, or they have more training the next day, then yeah, you would do ice bath or cold therapy after that, because you want to lower the inflammation and get into that recovery state a lot sooner, all right? And that will reduce delayed onset of muscle soreness, okay, DOMS. So that means that they can perform better the next day. So that would be the only time that you would, so like for a strength athlete, perhaps during competition, any kind of sports athlete who's not looking to grow at the time, to grow hypertrophy, but to get the strength benefits, the fitness benefits, and competition benefits, then you would do ice bath after, like immediately after training. And that is also, again, training their autonomic nervous system as well to cope with that stress. Okay. So these are protocols you want to implement if you're, depending on what you are training for. Now, when it comes to recovery, all right. Now, I've spoken about this before too. With breath work, we can increase our window of recovery with breath work. We can also increase our strength and let me see, hypertrophy benefits, and also lower our DOMS and increase our recovery time, or not just time, but also our recovery. Let me see. Yeah, speed up our recovery as well with breath work as well. So this is why cold therapy and breath work are a great combination. Now, when it comes to warming up after the ice bath or cold therapy, a lot of people will do like push-ups or squats, full body sort of exercises, just body weight, to also increase their testosterone and so on, because compound movements also increase our testosterone levels. Okay, it stimulates more production. But I use breath work. I use activation breath work because you also stimulate other fluids throughout the body. So breath work will stimulate your lymph fluid circulation. It stimulates blood cell, okay, your blood not just circulation, but also blood cell production, okay, because like cold therapy does help with production of testosterone, breath work will also stimulate the EPO from the kidneys through hypertrophy inducible factors. Okay, and these are proteins that will stimulate the kidney, and that will also stimulate more blood cells. Okay, more blood cell production. So you get stem cells, white cells, red cells, and your platelet levels go up. So again, these are two fantastic modalities for everyone. It doesn't matter what your purpose, but for someone who's gone through chemotherapy, especially, you have a permanently inhibited sort of production of testosterone and EPO and so on, blood cell production and platelets. This is a perfect treatment, okay, that anyone can do. You can do it from a bed, right? So with the ice bath therapy, and then the breath work, you also mobilize. You also stimulate cerebral spinal fluid, okay, with breath work, because when you're breathing in through the nose and out through the nose, for example, as well, you are cooling the brain, and you also stimulate. Especially if you use certain techniques like Nadi Shodhana, for example, will highlight both sides of the brain, and this will help in turn stimulate more cerebral spinal fluid, and that is actually one of the most important fluids throughout the body, of course. Also blood and lymph fluid, of course. But this will warm the body. Okay, so it's a really great approach to this protocol. If you do ice bath or cold therapy, then breath work and activation breath work, especially, you are going to increase your EPO production, your testosterone production, all these fluids, and so much more. You'd be surprised how much stronger this will make you. If you're an athlete, for example, you're going to go to the gym, get bigger, get stronger, and so on. But just in general, you'd be surprised just how much you can move. You stimulate your adipose tissue, and so on. It's just, there's so many benefits to this. You'd be surprised. Now, you also are going to build up a CO2 tolerance. Okay, so you're going to reduce your reactive oxygen species, reduce oxidative stress on your mitochondria as well. You produce other great antioxidants like nitric oxide, and of course, glutamine is another great thing as well. Now, when it comes to cancer, for example, glutamine, and like, if you know anything about Professor Seyfried, he says like glutamine and glucose both feed cancer cells. Well, brown adipose tissue and cold therapy actually inhibits, well, because it produces more D3, D3 actually inhibits the uptake of tumors to, it actually, D3 inhibits the uptake of glutamine by tumors. Okay, so actually you don't need to take glutamine blockers like some people suggest. D3 will actually block most of the uptake of tumors of D3, of glutamine by D3 by tumors. Okay, so another great benefit of cold therapy, and of course, like I said, it also reduces the blood glucose levels, and it will compete with the tumor for the glucose. So it's really a powerful modality for that. Now the breath work as well, like building CO2 tolerance. CO2 is an antioxidant mobilizer, really, but it's also the signaling molecule for oxygen to get into the cells. So it actually it actually allows the oxygen to attach to the hemoglobin, and then releases the oxygen into the cell where you need it the most. So that in itself reduces the oxidative stress. Okay, and if you have a look at this is a theory that was developed by Christian Bohr back in 1904, but there are many others who have actually built on this theory throughout the last 150 or throughout the last 120 years or so. So there's a lot going on when you're talking about breath work. You also it is also the only way that we can consciously control our autonomic nervous system. Now, our autonomic nervous system controls our heart rate variability, our blood pressure, our digestion. Okay, so leaky gut, for example, is quite common these days, and it's not just due to poor diet. It's also due to people living in that sympathetic nervous state rather than the parasympathetic, so that you are constantly stressed. There's a lot of anxiety and so on, and when you're living in that state, you basically get like a paralyzed stomach and digestion, so you actually absorb far less nutrients from your food. Even on a good healthy diet, this can leave you sometimes there's a lot of studies actually out there. Some of them say up to 70% of your nutrients are actually lost when you're in that sympathetic sort of state. So there are down-regulating breathwork techniques that will activate your vagus nerve, and this will lower your heart rate, lower your blood pressure, and put you into that rest and digest state where you will absorb far more nutrients from your food. So I believe that it's an absolute must before you eat your post-workout meal, for example. To get in that rest and digest mode, you then get into your rest and recovery, because that's when all of the recovery happens in your body, right? So that if you are after hypertrophy, for example, or strength gains or anything like that, this is when all that growth happens. So it's not as important to do, to eat immediately after your meal. To eat immediately after your training. This is a long-standing sort of fitness industry myth, right? And honestly, there's no real science behind it either. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that just won't die. It's far more important to control your autonomic nervous system than it is to eat immediately after training. Now, building up a CO2 tolerance, like I said, is another great benefit. There are many ways you can do this. Now, Breath work that involves breath retention or exhale breath holds, okay, are very good for building up your CO2 tolerance, okay. Now, breath holds, prolonged breath holds, exhale breath holds, have shown to produce up to 30% more EPO from your kidneys than with the peak being around about 3 hours after your last prolonged breath hold. Okay, so techniques with like Tumo, for example, Tumo breathing is very good with prolonged breath holds afterwards. And that is, in fact, what like the Wim Hof method is actually based on Tumo breathing. All right. What else? There is, but this is an activation breath work as well. So this will get you into, this would be like a pre-workout sort of breath work that will make you a lot stronger and will certainly get a lot more blood cell production. Like I said, the EPO production is up about 30% higher, with the peak being about 3 hours after. So that you can imagine is going to, you have more blood cells, you've got a great CO2 tolerance, your CO2 levels are maximized, then obviously you're going to be a lot stronger when you are training. And then you need to get into, when you finish training, you need to get into a rest and recovery mode as fast as possible. And the quickest way to do that is to control your breath and control your autonomic nervous system, get down into that ventral vagal state. And that's where all the growth and recovery happens. Now, if you're not an athlete, if you're not going to the gym, you're not doing anything, this is still beneficial, okay? Because you still have the same needs, just not to that extent, okay? Everyone still needs to get into that, or still needs to produce more of these hormones that produce more blood cells. And you still need to be eating in that rest and digest mode, because if you are living in that sympathetic nervous state and you get anxiety a lot, or you get you kind of fry your nervous system for a start, but you get high blood pressure, high heart rate, you get pretty much a paralyzed digestion tract, leaky gut, and you're also just not, you're going to have low testosterone, low EPO production, low blood cells, which means you're going to have a weaker immune system and you're going to be open to more infections, colds and flus and so on like that. So this is all very important stuff for everyone. It's not just about athletes. Let me see. I'm just going to go have a look at a couple of comments. Josephine, hello. I kind of wish I knew it was only going to be the 4 of us for Christmas dinner, as my mama, son, and daughter know how I eat. Could have done a full carnival dinner, as now it feels like there's going to be a lot of wasted food. I wish ducks and chickens. Yeah, I wish I had ducks and chickens. Yeah, ducks and chickens are great, actually. Yeah, I'll give anything I can't eat, I give to the chickens as well. Yeah, Christmas dinner is going to be, this is actually, we'll get into that in a minute, actually, like the holidays, eating and so on. All right, so let's finish up this these protocols. So for training protocols, for example, I think this is pretty much similar for everyone, really. Do cold therapy, then do breath work to warm up. Okay, then whether you go to the gym or train afterwards or not, it doesn't really matter. There's still a great benefit for anyone. Now, down regulating breath work, where this might be different for people who do go to the gym and do exercise a lot. Post workout, you want to do a down regulating breath work, like 4-7-8 breathing, cardiac coherent breathing, which is just 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Do that for about 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes is all it takes. 5 minutes post workout. That's all you need to do. 5 minutes of down regulating breath work 478, cardiac coherent, box breathing, Nadi Shodhana breathing. All right. 5 minutes and you were down in, you've activated that vagus nerve, you've down regulated your nervous system, you're now ready to eat, you're now ready to digest and absorb those nutrients. Okay. And then you can eat your meal. Okay. If you are hungry, don't force yourself to eat. You don't need to force yourself to eat after a workout. Sometimes after, especially like a leg workout, if it's a very heavy leg workout, for me, sometimes it's a couple of hours afterwards. All right. Now, this is also another way you can stimulate testosterone, like heavy movement, heavy weight. Now, it doesn't have to be heavy; it just needs to be. It's perceived heavy. All right. So, like, if it's heavy for you, this will also help you to produce testosterone. And again, blood cells and so on. And diet. So, I mean, obviously, I think that the carnivore diet is these three are so synergistic. It's perfectly matched. Everything is just a perfect combination here. The carnivore diet, okay, or paleo diet, or a heavy meat diet, okay, your ancestral diet, right? Heavy fat, heavy protein, heavy meat diet. For antioxidants like glutathione, for example, you need meat, all right? For CO2, you also produce more from fat. The same. This, if you're talking about the Bohr effect, all right. So there are many benefits that meat will help with the same production of these hormones and blood cells and so on that cold therapy and breath work will also help. Okay. You get reduced reactive oxygen species, you get reduced oxidative stress and so on. It's just a cleaner diet in general. So now this routines as well is what is going to help you through the holidays. So we're going to talk about, hello Cynthia. When did this where did this come from? I thought he had something at like 2 a.m. my time. Anyway, glad I found this. Hey, everyone. Good to see that. Hello, Cynthia. Very good to see you. Yeah, very good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so if getting through the holidays, this routine will also help you to stick to your plans and stick to your diet, okay? Because we just naturally, when our routines fall apart, usually our diet falls apart as well, okay? So like I said, I think last week, actually, the best way to get through the holidays, if you want to stick to your diet, for example, is to stick to your routine. I think it's very important to stick to your routine because it's not only going to be better for your health, but it's also going to be better for your state of mind. Okay, because when you are because momentum, okay, sort of builds consistency. All right, so and momentum just gets easier and easier. You don't want to break healthy habits for old ones, and then try and retrain your habits again in the new year just because it's January all of a sudden and it's time for New Year's resolutions. But like these protocols that I've been talking about the last 50 minutes or so, these are, I think, vitally important for everyone, whether you are healthy already, sedentary, an athlete, cancer patient, diabetic, or so on. This will help you get on top of your health. This is what helps you to rebuild. Okay. And I know this not just because I study this, and I've been studying this for a long time, but I've lived it. I've experienced this. I have the blood test to prove it. Okay. The benefits of the increased blood markers has been incredible. You know, like, and in fact, you know, this is, you know, 11 years now in remission since October. October was my 11th year. So I'm into my 12th year. Okay. Um, I'm on zero medications. I don't take any supplements. Okay. I don't take D3 or any sort of, you know, the hormone replacing supplement. Okay. Because these things are rancid. Okay. You do not need to take a supplement. If you are doing these three things, if you are on the carnivore diet, if you're doing cold therapy, if you're doing breath work, you do not need to take supplements. Okay. You're and again, it's not just those three things, you know, like I do like to be outside first thing in the morning as well for my breath work and my ice bath. You know, the sunlight, you know, also helps you to produce other things like D3 and also nitric oxide. Okay. Breathing techniques will also help you stimulate nitric oxide. Certain, like Brahmari bee breath, for example, has been shown to produce up to 15 times more nitric oxide, because the main production of nitric oxide happens in your sinuses. Okay, this is another reason why you need to breathe through the nose. And of course, you also get nitric oxide from amino acids that you eat, like L-arginine and so on. Again, nitric oxide, another very strong antioxidant, reduces reactive oxygen species, reduces oxidative stress. It's a vasodilator, and it also helps you to get rid of headaches and so on. The same as CO2 is also a vasodilator. So it improves circulation, improves cell production, improves and lowers, you know, heart rate and so on and so on. There's so many great benefits to nitric oxide and CO2, right? Like I said, you know, CO2 is my superpower, and it is yours, right? So, you know, being out in the sun also helps with that. Being grounded, and, you know, also spoke about heat therapy as well. But these things are vitally important for everyone, absolutely everyone, no matter where you are in life, what you're doing. Okay, this combination will get you through, will help you rebuild your health, make you stronger. All right. Now, like I said, I've got years of blood markers, blood tests to prove this stuff. You know, it's not just about what I study; it's about actually living this stuff. You know, my blood markers now are in a normal, healthy range, and this is quite unheard of, really. Not many people have, you know, have done that sort of thing. And like we are talking about before, the efficacy of chemotherapy is incredibly low. So these were all these easy methods that anyone can do in anywhere, really. And whether you're going through treatments or just trying to improve your health, this will help. Okay. Now, sticking to your routine through the holidays is also going to help you stick to your diet. So, another thing about yes, amino acids, proteins are very important on the carnivore diet, on any diet, but also your fats. Okay, don't be afraid of eating fat. Fat is where you get most of your energy. You also get CO2 production, and you get, you know, long chain and short chain fatty acids that are vital for your brain. Okay, also vital for other processes in the body. All right, so don't be afraid to eat the fat, and yeah. So how is CO2? Is it okay? Your superpower. I probably have a lot of that around here right now since I've been cooking, baking soda, I make washing soda. It releases CO2. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. CO2, Cynthia, is has a lot of benefits in the body. It's an antioxidant mobilizer. Okay, so it actually mobilizes antioxidants to help you reduce reactive oxygen species and reduce oxidative stress. It's a signaling molecule for oxygen, so actually it allows the hemoglobin to pick up the oxygen. Okay, so it's like the connector, and it also allows the hemoglobin to let go of the oxygen when it gets to the cells that needs the oxygen. So, for example, if you have low CO2, this is called the Bohr effect. It was actually a theory that came out in 1904 by developed by Christian Bohr, but it actually has been built on and talked about for the last 120 years or so by other scientists as well, but keeps getting buried. If you have low CO2 levels, for example, the hemoglobin will it'll get very sticky and it'll sort of cling on to the oxygen, and it won't actually be delivered to the cells. Okay, so then you get oxidative stress. CO2 is also a vasodilator, so it allows the blood vessels to relax and allows blood to flow more readily and easily. So it increases circulation, same as nitric oxide does. For a number of reasons, there are, for example, if you wake up with a headache, if you've been mouth breathing and you've been, you sort of wake up with a bit of a headache, you got dry mouth and so on, or even if you have a headache throughout the day, if you've been breathing too fast or too frequently, okay, you blow off too much CO2 and you get a headache. This is because you're getting what's called you get vasorestriction, okay, which means that the blood flow to the brain is not getting there and you're not getting the oxygen delivered to the cells. So, low CO2 is a real problem. So when the powers that be keep saying that they want to reduce CO2, because they know how important it is to our processes throughout the body. All right. They just want us to suicide. They just want us to suicide ourselves. Let me see. CO2 is also. I think that's most of it actually. So it's very important. It's also like when, for example, when asthmatics they can't breathe. A lot of that is because they don't have enough CO2 levels in their body, because it also acts as a vasodilator. It's a relaxant for the lungs to actually relax, because the capillaries won't relax. So to get the CO2 into the lungs, you need to, and that will help relax the lungs and allow them to breathe easier. And the same reason for like muscle cramps also, if you're not getting circulation, if you got vasorestriction in, like, say, in your calf muscles, for example, or any muscles, you get a muscle cramp. Again, and that's the reason for that is you're not getting oxygen to the cells, but you also you also have that vasorestriction rather than vasodilation. So CO2 is really important for your body. It's definitely your superpower. Okay, it makes you stronger. The more oxygen you get to your cells, okay, the better you can perform as well. When it comes to exercise or anything else, also the better you can think as well. Okay. Have a big pork roast, lots of fat and skin. Oh, nice. Sounds good. Yeah. Pork crackling. Yummy. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Fat, again, like in the mitochondria, you produce, you produce 3 times more ATP and CO2 and easy water. Okay. Like, so, fat is very important for your body processes. All right. And CO2 is extremely important. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So this is why mouth taping is yes, mouth taping while sleeping is really important. Yeah. Yeah, mouth taping, or like you can put a strap under your chin to stop you from mouth breathing. That's another great thing. While you are sleeping, you don't want to be breathing through your mouth. That also, mouth breathing also um, brings your autonomic nervous system up into that sympathetic nervous state as well. So you're going to get anxiety. You'll be hyper vigilant. You're kind of paranoid, and this is actually training your autonomic nervous system to get that way. And that's when, left untreated, or you keep training your nervous system that way, you get into what's called the dorsal vagal state, and that's where you get like chronic depression and so on and so on. Okay. um, so mouth breathing, you can do. There are different breathing techniques, like breathwork techniques, where you do use mouth breathing, but it's a hormetic stressor for like a temporary sort of thing, and then you sort of do a prolonged breath hold afterwards to equalize out your CO2 levels. But yeah, this, if you don't want to be mouth breathing for 7 hours a night while you're sleeping. Okay, that's really bad for your nervous system. It's also, you get high blood pressure and stress and so on. And it just sort of rebounds. It gets worse and worse because you wake up in that sympathetic state, and your heart rate starts climbing, and then because your heart rate starts climbing, your nervous system says, well, my blood pressure's up, and you start stressing about this, and the stress levels make it faster, and then the heart rate gets faster, and then the stress gets higher. So it sort of keeps on rebounding. So, but the only way to really control that is to control your breath, and then you can control your autonomic nervous system. Okay. Now, this is not a new thing though either. This is like cultures from all around the world, like every culture around the world, for thousands and thousands of years, perhaps tens of thousands of years, has had or used breathwork techniques to control their nervous system. Like some of the most powerful and fierce warriors throughout the past, they've always used breathwork to get into that warrior state, to make them stronger, to make them fierce, to let go of stress, and to let go of fear, so that they can then go into battle and be strong. They've also used different breathwork techniques to remain calm and control their nervous system while they are actually fighting. And then they've also used different other down-regulating breathwork techniques to get to then let go of trauma of the battle, and to restore calm, and to get into that sort of philosopher state, that creative state, where the rest and digest is where you get all those creative states. You activate the ventral vagal state, and that's where you can write, and you can paint, and you can play music and do other things. Now, I compare this, like you got upregulation, like activation. So you got like the warrior state, and then you got the philosopher state. Because throughout history, some of the greatest philosophers that that we listen to even today, from the past, have also been great warriors. The Marcus Aurelius meditations, the Roman soldiers, Japanese samurai, and many other cultures. Okay, so there are activation breathworks in hara breathing from Japan. There are and down regulating hara breathing. Pranayama has many different techniques, and so on and so on. The shamanic breathwork techniques, and so on. And they had techniques. They used this. That they used to say that, or the ancients would say, it was they use breath work as like medicine. Like the Plains Indians in America, the only thing they ate was buffalo, and they I mean, they ate buffalo, that was their diet, but they also looked at breath work as medicine. Okay. And they would train their babies to only breathe through the nose. And they would have, when they're first born, they would have like rotating shifts of women who would keep the baby's mouth shut when they were sleeping, sort of thing, to train them to only breathe through the nose. Okay. And breath work most definitely can be medicine, and it is. It does for me. Like when I was in Japan, just a few weeks ago, I was sitting out in the snow, and just shorts and t-shirt, just doing my breath work. And as is quite often, traveling from summer to winter, sort of thing. The first couple of days I didn't do any breath work, and I started getting a cold, and I got a very scratchy throat. My nose was blocked, so I did my breath work, and honestly, within an hour, I was completely clear. So techniques like Nadi Shodhana, which is just alternate nostril breathing. Okay. If you wake up with a blocked nose, for example, okay, force yourself to breathe through those nostrils and open up the nasal passages, and that will also produce more nitric oxide and give you a vasodilator. It will make it much easier for you to breathe throughout the rest of the day. Okay. So these techniques, a lot of them have been repackaged and sort of formulated today. Like there's new things like Wim Hof, for example. Like Wim Hof method is actually based on tumor breathing. Right? This is something that monks have done for many thousands of years. Okay, there's nothing new about this stuff. But even the ancients knew how to control their autonomic nervous system, and they knew the benefits and the strength and down-regulating sort of benefits. Like I said, some of the greatest philosophers in history were also some of the greatest and more fierce warriors. Okay. Like Musashi, who's a very famous samurai from Japan, and so many others. So it's not like a new age sort of hoo-ha hippie sort of exercise. There are real benefits that our ancestors knew. And I mean, sure, we might have new techniques of doing this, but even with the cold therapy, it was a technique like Japanese samurai. One of the criteria to meet some training goals in Japan was to stand under an ice cold waterfall. Like, some of the rivers in Japan are so ice cold. I used to go swimming in them all the time. Because they are so cold, because it just runs down. Like some mountains have snow on them all year round in Japan, and when this water runs down the river, it's incredibly cold, and they had to stand for sometimes hours at a time under this waterfall with using hatha breathing, where they just use the lower belly for breathing, but they also have to breathe so slowly that when they put a feather under their nose, that feather doesn't move either when they're breathing in or when they're exhaling. All right. So this is how much control they had to prove they had over their nervous system and over their breathing and so on. And one of the teachings of Musashi, for example, was strike then breathe, sort of thing. Okay. So you can imagine how much control that would take to breathe like that for hours at a time. It's incredible, especially in the cold. Especially when you got a ice cold waterfall coming, falling down on you. The Roman soldiers, they had onsens and stuff like. Even in Japan, they use onsens. Onsens is sorry, onsen is onsen is the name for in Japan for the hot springs. Okay. But these are seen as places of healing. You get a lot of nutrients in the water, a lot of minerals. Okay, they even drink the onsen. They even drink the hot spring water in Japan. You can actually buy bottled hot spring water. Okay, but it's been seen as a place of healing. But whenever they use these hot springs, they also do the cold therapy afterwards. Okay, they've always done that. You know, this is part of the culture. The same with the Northern Europeans. So you do your hot and then your cold. All right, so I'm just going to have a look at some of these comments, and then we'll get through them. I mostly breathe through my nose, good, but also exhale the same way. Good, excellent. Yeah, I mean, breathing in and out through the nose is the way we should breathe on our, in our resting state, in our normal resting state. Okay. Should I try to exhale through my mouth? I generally just keep my mouth shut. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good thing. Generally speaking, in our rest state, we should only breathe in and out through the nose. Okay. It's not until you do, if you're doing exercise or breath work, for example, you can breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, sort of thing. But there's a short-term sort of hormetic stresses. Okay, so no, that's actually a very positive thing. Okay, if you can still overbreathe though, even if you are only breathing through the nose in and out. Ideally, we shouldn't be breathing more than 6 or 7 times per minute. Okay, but the average breather today is up around 25 to 30 sometimes. So try and make sure that even though you're breathing through your nose, try and slow it down to, especially in resting state, use what we call cardiac coherent, which means that you regulate your breathing to your heart rate, and you say count 5 seconds in and then 5 seconds out, and this will help get you into that rest and digest sort of state. Now, if you can't do that while exercising, that's okay. It is good. I mean, even when you are exercising, the slower you breathe, and this takes time. Look, it takes time to develop this. Okay, so don't be too disappointed if you can't do it immediately. All right, it's the same with everything, like cold therapy or lifting weights. You start small and it gets better as you go. So even when you are exercising, if you can slow down your breathing, you will actually perform better. Okay, because you build up your CO2 tolerance. All right, and this will actually deliver more oxygen to the cells. This will make you stronger and fitter. All right, so try just slowing down your breathing. Being outside at nighttime, yeah, it's great. When dark, okay, I love watching the sky and the stars. Yeah, I do that too. I love doing that. I love star watching. I try and see things flying around and so on. The air feels cooler, yes, and I feel calm afterwards. Yeah, you do, because the reason you're feeling calmer afterwards when you're outside at night, especially if you are barefoot on the ground, that really helps. This also helps you to, and you probably notice that when you are outside doing this, your breathing is a little bit slower. Okay, it's when you have a slower, calmer breathing, that's what's actually helping you to calm down as well, lower your heart rate. That's why post workout, a lot of people say walking is king, sort of thing. It's not the actual exercise of walking that actually is the benefit, although it does have some benefit. It's the actual breathing, because when you do a slow, steady state walk, it is our natural progression to get into that sort of cardiac coherent sort of breathing, okay, where we steady our breathing, we slow our breathing down. And that's what gets us into that rest and digest state. Now, if you are outside at night as well, you are also activating more like a higher melatonin production. And now our mitochondria also produce melatonin in those cells as well. Grounded. If you do this barefoot out in the ground, it's going to help as well. You're going to increase that melatonin production. That's your sleep hormone. Okay, so it's really very beneficial to do that. You calm everything down. If you can, if you another great thing you could do if you're out there just looking at the stars and so on, add a down regulating breathwork session, like just 5 minutes, or more. It's up to you. Even 5 minutes is enough. Do like 4-7-8 breathing, box breathing, cardiac coherent breathing, Nadi Shodhana breathing, something like that. You will find, actually, Nadi Shodhana is really good. The alternate nostril breathing, where you go 5 seconds in, then 10 seconds out, the opposite. This really activates your vagus nerve. It's going to open up your sinuses to help you breathe through the nose while you are sleeping. And because you are outside, you're grounding and you're getting that dark, you're seeing how dark it is, you're producing more melatonin. This will really help you sleep. Okay. Yeah, that's a great thing to do, Josephine. Yeah, I do that too. I like doing that. Yeah. New Zealand, they must breathe a lot when doing the warrior call. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. There we go. Not sure if that's right words. Warrior call. Yeah, the shaka. They call it the shaka, but yeah, it's the I mean, that's a good example actually. That's when they do that. That's a form of breath work that they are doing to. It's meant to intimidate the people that are about to fight, for one. All right. But there are many breathwork techniques that actually incorporate that yelling. Okay, even hara breathing, Japanese samurai have a yelling technique as well, just like the haka, or it's shaka, is it shaka or haka or whatever it's called? Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone, but I'm just not sure on the name. But the breath work involved, it's about hyping up their autonomic nervous system and letting go of fear and getting them into that warrior state. So it's the breath work. That's why they do the yelling and stuff like that as well. So it's really cool. Yeah, it's interesting to watch though. People still using that today. That's cool. I feel if you don't breathe right, you would pass out. Yeah, if you don't breathe properly, you can pass out. Yeah, but that's sometimes a useful thing. You won't stop yourself from. I mean, even when you pass out, your autonomic nervous system sort of kicks in, and you just automatically start breathing properly anyway. Always start breathing again. So I think it's spelled right. Yeah, warrior. It's raining. Oh. I don't need cold waterfalls right now. Yeah, we just got over an Arctic freeze with prolonged negative temperatures. Yeah, that's great. Like I said, like at the beginning, you don't need to be in the water to do cold therapy. Cold air is also very effective. Okay, will help a great deal as well. And you don't need to be doing it for a whole long time either. Like if you do ice bars, for example, like less than 10 minutes is enough. 10 minutes each morning. Cold air, you might want to do it a bit longer. Like some of those studies I mentioned before, 21 degrees Celsius, which is not that cold, for a 7-day period sort of thing, showed, inhibited tumor growth and so on in cancer patients. These were lymphoma cancer patients. But just in a point where you don't have to be shivering either. Like just if you are feeling, oh, that's chilly, that's cold, sort of thing, that's enough to start with anyway. Yeah, like the Inuit, obviously they lived in extremely cold, so they grew up with that sort of stuff. But they also wore very warm clothing and so on. So it's really, and it's not like they went swimming in the ice a whole lot either. It's like just the cold air, living in that temperature would help a great deal. The other day, you and Jonathan recommended doing support chest rows. Yes, very good. Instead of standing due to better breathing. I don't understand how that would help. I do mine bent forward and standing. Yeah, that's good too. Well, I mean, the supported chest really just, you're sort of pulling against that pad. Okay, so you can't really cheat. Whereas, if you're doing, a lot of people when they do like a standing bent over sort of row, they tend to use momentum. They pull back and use a lot of momentum. So it's really about the using the actual arms to pull, and using the arms and back to actually pull that weight up. It's really just technique sort of difference is all. Some people prefer the supported chest. I think it's a little bit more difficult for women, obviously, for obvious reasons. But both are good. Like standing bent over rows are great. I use them too. I think they're great. You can either use dumbbells or barbell. All very good exercises. I think compound movements again, like such as that, where you don't have so much support. When you're doing a standard bend over one, it's more of a compound movement because you had to do more supportive work as well. I think is also very good for hormone production for a start. Any sort of compound movement you produce, you have more of a hormetic stressor on your body. So you get more hormone production like testosterone, for example, which is going to in turn produce more blood cells, okay, later on down the track. So, these are also very good things to do. So like that's why deadlifts and other exercises like that can be very beneficial for hormone-wise. But they are also exercises that need good instruction and good techniques as well. So, okay. All right. So that's, there's a lot of, I think we covered a fair amount of great, good information in there. If you have any questions, let me know. Yeah. Otherwise, we might end it there. Let's see. I will post a link there. Yeah, actually, it's getting late. So, all right. So, if you don't have any further questions, thanks for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Again, I really appreciate the support of the channel for this year. It's been great. I really wish everyone who's listening a very Merry Christmas, and I hope you all have a great New Year. And looking forward to the new year and new things, bigger things, and better health. Okay, to everyone. Again, sorry about that. Like I said before, when it comes to sticking to your diet throughout the holidays, I find it much easier if you stick to your routine. It's going to be easier for you to stick to your diet. Okay. But having said that, don't worry too much about putting on weight. Okay. Weight is not the only marker of health for a start, but you can always get back on the journey in January. And I've always found it easier myself to just stick to the routine, stick to the diet, and then you don't have to sort of come back from that setback area. But it's just not that difficult to get back on and to lose that weight either. So don't be scared to put weight on. It's not a big deal, really. Okay. All right, great. I hope you all have a great Christmas, Merry Christmas, and I wish you all the very best to all yourselves and your families. Okay. Thanks again.